This woman says that after her husband went on a peacekeeping mission in Haiti, she immediately started a relationship with Baltasar Ngonga. However, their relationship ended badly, as the woman herself admits.
It all started when my husband, a dedicated police officer, was deployed to Haiti for a UN peacekeeping mission. It was supposed to be a short assignment, just 6 months, but as the months stretched into a year, loneliness settled in like an unwelcome guest. I tried to stay strong, but the empty bed, the silent nights, and the lack of his touch wore me down. Then, I met Baltasar Ngonga, the powerful head of the National Financial Investigation Agency in Equatorial Guinea. Our paths crossed at a high-profile charity gala, one of those glamorous events where politicians, businessmen, and socialites mingled. He was charming, confident, and had an aura of authority that made everyone in the room take notice. At first, our interactions were innocent, just polite conversations about the state of the country, corruption, and the work he did. But there was an undeniable tension between us. Every glance lingered a little too long, every accidental touch sent shivers down my spine. I tried to resist, but the loneliness, the longing, and the thrill of the forbidden were too much to bear. One evening, after a private dinner in his luxurious villa overlooking the Atlantic, everything changed. The wine flowed, the music was soft, and the city lights reflected in his dark, knowing eyes. He touched my hand and whispered, "You deserve to be loved, to be wanted." In that moment, I forgot about duty, about loyalty, I only felt desire. What happened next was inevitable. That night, in his arms, I found what I had been missing for so long: passion, excitement, and a sense of being truly seen. We became reckless, meeting in secret whenever we could. Hotels, private estates, even in the shadows of government buildings. I knew it was dangerous. Baltasar wasn't just any man, he was powerful, and secrets in Equatorial Guinea had a way of coming to light. But I didn't care. Not until the day my husband sent a message: "Coming home next week. I can't wait to hold you again." Guilt hit me like a tidal wave. What had I done? How could I face him? Yet, deep inside, I knew somewhere between love and betrayal, I had changed. And there was no going back. The message from my husband lingered on the screen, his words a bitter reminder of the life I once knew. "Coming home next week. I can't wait to hold you again." I stared at it, numb, as the weight of my actions crushed me. My heart twisted with a mix of shame and anticipation. I hadn't been this conflicted in years, not since I had first fallen in love with him, and yet the emotions were different now, more complicated. That evening, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Baltasar. "I can feel the distance growing between us. Have I lost you?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I closed my eyes and tried to picture my husband. His rugged face, the way he smiled when he was nervous, the sound of his voice when he called me on those rare days he could find time to talk from Haiti. I had missed him, of course, but now it felt like a distant memory, a part of me that had been slowly fading, replaced by the magnetic pull of Baltasar's presence. But then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from my husband. My heart skipped a beat as I debated whether to answer or not. Would he know? Could he sense the change in me, even through a simple phone call? I answered it, my voice trembling slightly. "Hey, love. I didn't expect you to call tonight. I miss you." His deep voice rumbled through the phone, sending a pang of longing through me. "I've been thinking about you every day, and I can't wait to come back home. Just a few more days, and I'll be there. It's been too long." I swallowed hard, the guilt threatening to choke me. "I miss you, too," I replied, the words feeling hollow. He went on about his plans for when he returned, how we'd spend time together, how he'd take me out on dates again, how we'd pick up right where we left off. But as he spoke, all I could think of was Balthasar. His touch, his intensity, the way he had filled the empty spaces in my life. I couldn't deny it, I was torn. As the conversation ended, I sat frozen, trying to reconcile the two worlds that were pulling me in opposite directions. Could I really go back to my husband, the man I once loved so deeply, after everything that had happened? Could I keep pretending that nothing had changed? A few days later, I got the call. My husband's return had been postponed. A new mission had come up, something critical in Haiti that required his immediate attention. His departure would be delayed indefinitely, and he wouldn't be able to return until further notice. Relief washed over me, but it wasn't the kind I expected. Instead of feeling grateful for more time to prepare for his return, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, as if I had been given more time to figure out what I wanted. I didn't know what to do. With my husband's absence now extended, I could continue my affair with Balthasar, live in the moment, and pretend that life had suddenly become something more exciting, more daring. But something told me that would only lead to more distraction. And yet, the thought of telling Balthasar the truth, that my husband would be coming back soon, filled me with dread. I had become too attached to him, to the world we had built together in the shadows. I couldn't just let go of it all, and not yet. So, I found myself trapped in the tension between duty and desire, between loyalty and betrayal, with no easy way out. As much as I hated to admit it, I was beginning to wonder if I had lost myself in the process of trying to hold on to both worlds. And in the back of my mind, I couldn't help but wonder if my husband's return was delayed, how long would I be able to keep pretending that everything was normal? How long before the choices I made began to unravel everything I had worked so hard to build? The days stretched on, each one a stolen moment with Balthasar. At first, I told myself it was just temporary, a borrowed fantasy before I had to return to reality. But the more time I spent with him, the harder it became to imagine going back. Balthasar sensed my hesitation, the way my mind drifted when we lay tangled together in his small apartment, the way I sometimes flinched when my phone buzzed, knowing it could be my husband. One evening, as we sat by the dimly lit bar where we had first met, he reached across the table, his fingers brushing over mine. "You don't have to keep running from what you want," he said softly. I let out a shaky breath. "It's not that simple. Isn't it?" His dark eyes searched mine. "You light up when you're with me. But when you talk about him, it's like you disappear." I closed my eyes, the truth cutting deep. Had I already left my husband in my heart? Days turned into weeks, and my husband's return remained uncertain. I stopped waiting for the next message that would tell me he was coming home. Instead, I let myself fall deeper into the life I was building with Balthasar: weekend getaways, secret rendezvous, nights filled with passion instead of lonely silence. That evening, I met Balthasar at our usual spot, a quiet cafe tucked away in a narrow alley, where the hum of the city felt distant. He was already there, waiting for me, his dark eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on mine. "You didn't answer my message," he said as I slid into the seat across from him. I hesitated. I didn't know what to say. His gaze softened. "Tell me the truth." The truth. I wasn't sure I even knew what that was anymore. Every time I was with him, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. But that didn't erase the life I had built with my husband, the home, the memories, the promises. Instead of answering, I reached for my coffee, wrapping my fingers around the warm cup. "I don't want to think about anything tonight," I said finally. "I just want to be here with you." Balthasar studied me for a moment before nodding. "Then let's not waste time." We spent the evening walking through the city, hands brushing, laughter spilling between us like a secret language. He took me to a small jazz club, where the air was thick with the scent of whiskey and the deep hum of a saxophone. I let myself melt into the music, into him, into the feeling of escaping everything that tethered me to reality. When we left, the streets were quiet, the city lights casting a soft glow on the pavement. He pulled me close, his fingers tilting my chin up. "Stay with me tonight." I should have said no. I should have gone home. But instead, I let him lead me back to his apartment, where the world outside ceased to exist. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Balthasar loved to spoil me. It started subtly, a gift here, a surprise there. At first, I resisted and insisting I didn't need anything from him. But he was persistent, and over time, I let myself indulge in his generosity. One afternoon, he took me to a high-end boutique, the kind of place I usually walked past without a second glance. The moment we stepped inside, I felt out of place among the racks of silk dresses and designer heels, but Balthasar had a way of making me feel like I belonged. "Pick anything you want," he murmured, slipping an arm around my waist. I hesitated, glancing at the price tags. "Balthasar, this is too much." He smirked, tilting my chin up to meet his gaze. "You deserve to look as beautiful as you make me feel." With that, I let him spoil me. Dresses that hugged my calves in just the right way, heels that made my legs look impossibly long, perfumes that clung to my skin like a whispered secret. And when we left, my hands full of shopping bags, he pulled me close and pressed a thick envelope into my palm. "For whatever you need," he said casually. "Makeup, jewelry, anything that makes you happy." I stared at the envelope, my heart pounding. I should have refused, but deep down, I loved the way he worshipped me, not just with words and touch, but with the way he wanted to adorn me, to make me shine. And so, I let him. I started wearing bolder lipstick, letting my hair fall in soft waves over my shoulders. I walked with a new confidence, knowing that when I stepped into a room, heads would turn. Balthasar noticed. He always noticed. "You're intoxicating," he murmured one evening, his fingers tracing the silk of my new dress. "I love watching you become the woman you were meant to be." And with every stolen moment, every whispered promise, I let myself sink deeper into the world he was building for me, one where beauty, desire, and indulgence reigned supreme. Vacation in Spain. It was the kind of trip I never imagined taking, a spontaneous escape, the kind of thing that only happened in movies. Balthasar had mentioned it in passing one evening as we lay in bed, his fingers lazily tracing circles on my bare shoulder. "Let's go somewhere," he murmured. "Just us. No worries, no distractions." I laughed, thinking he was joking. "And where exactly do you plan on taking me?" "Spain." His voice was smooth, certain. "1 week. Madrid, Barcelona, anywhere you want." I turned to him, studying his expression. "You're serious?" He smirked. "Completely." Then he reached over to his bedside table, grabbed his phone, and within minutes, he had booked 2 first-class tickets. Just like that, we were leaving. The flight was luxurious, unlike anything I had experienced before. Champagne, plush seats, whispered conversations between stolen kisses. When we landed in Madrid, the warm breeze and the scent of orange blossoms welcomed us. Balthasar had everything planned: a 5-star hotel with a private balcony overlooking the city, where we sipped wine as the sun dipped below the horizon. Mornings were spent exploring narrow cobblestone streets, tasting fresh churros dipped in thick chocolate, and getting lost in the magic of the Prado Museum. In Barcelona, he took me shopping on Passeig de Gràcia, buying me silk dresses and designer heels without hesitation. I want you to have the best of everything, he said as he slid a diamond bracelet onto my wrist. At night, we dined in candlelit restaurants, his fingers tracing patterns on my thigh beneath the table. We danced until dawn in secret rooftop clubs, my body pressed against his, the city lights flickering around us. One evening, as we stood on a secluded beach in Costa Brava, the waves lapping at our feet, he turned to me with an intensity that made my breath hitch. I wish we could stay like this forever, he murmured, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. For a fleeting moment, I wished it too. Here, away from the real world, away from responsibilities and expectations, it was easy to pretend that we belonged to each other completely. But even paradise had an expiration date. And as much as I wanted to ignore it, I knew the moment we boarded that plane back home, reality would come crashing down around us. Baltasar recorded me. It started as a game, something playful between us. One evening, after a long dinner at a rooftop restaurant, we returned to our hotel suite in Barcelona, both of us still buzzing from the wine and the thrill of being together. The city lights spilled through the windows, casting golden patterns across the room. Baltasar leaned against the headboard, watching me as I slipped off my heels, his gaze dark with desire. "You have no idea how beautiful you are right now," he murmured. I smirked, tossing my hair over one shoulder. "I think you tell me that every day." He reached for his phone on the nightstand. "Because it's true. Let me prove it to you." I arched a brow. "How?" He raised the phone slightly. "Let me record you. Just for me." My heart pounded at the suggestion. "You want to film me?" "Only if you want to," he said, his voice soft but filled with anticipation. "I just want to remember you like this. The way you look at me. The way you move." A part of me hesitated. This was dangerous, intimate. But another part of me, the part that had already given into the thrill of being with him, found the idea exhilarating. So I let him. At first, it was innocent. I posed for him, laughing as I twirled in my new silk dress, letting the fabric slip off one shoulder. But the way he looked at me, the heat in his eyes, made me bolder. Slowly, I let the dress slide down my body, revealing the lingerie he had bought for me just days before. His voice was low, coaxing, worshipping. "You're a goddess," he whispered as he filmed, capturing every detail. I felt powerful, adored, utterly consumed by the moment. And when he finally set the phone down to pull me into his arms, I knew this was a memory neither of us would ever forget. I didn't think about the consequences then. I only thought about how much I wanted to be his, if only for that night. It was late, and we were tangled together in the dim glow of the bedside lamp. The air was thick with the scent of his cologne and the remnants of our passion. I was tracing slow circles on his chest when he suddenly took my hand, lacing his fingers with mine. "I want something more with you," Baltasar murmured, his voice deep and serious. I smiled lazily. "More? Haven't you already given me everything?" He exhaled, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "I want a child with you." The words sent a shockwave through me. My body tensed, and I pulled back slightly, searching his face for any sign that he was joking. But he wasn't. His eyes held a quiet intensity, a certainty that scared me more than anything. "Baltasar," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm serious," he said, sitting up, cupping my face in his hands. "I love you. I want to build something real with you. A family." My throat went dry. The thought of carrying his child, of having something permanent between us, was thrilling in a dangerous way. But reality came crashing in. My husband, my marriage, the life I was still tethered to. I shook my head, gently pulling away from his grasp. "I can't," I whispered. "You know I can't." His jaw tightened. "Because of him?" I swallowed hard. "Because of everything. Silence hung between us, heavy and suffocating. For the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes, disappointment, maybe even hurt. "You don't have to be afraid," he said after a long pause. "I would take care of you. Of us." And for a moment, I imagined it, a life where I didn't have to hide, where I was free to love him openly. But that was just a fantasy. The truth was, I was still bound to another man, and the thought of my husband finding out, of the consequences that would follow, sent a chill down my spine. I reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "Please don't ask me for something I can't give you." Balthasar exhaled sharply, looking away. And in that moment, I realized that no matter how much he loved me, there would always be a part of him that wanted more than I could ever give. The silence that followed was thick, heavier than any words could have been. Balthasar didn't say anything at first. He just lay back against the pillow, his hand still lingering near mine, though he didn't touch me. I could feel the tension radiating from him, like a storm brewing just beneath the surface. "I'm sorry," I whispered, unsure of what else to say. I can't do that. Not with everything that's at stake." He didn't respond, and the quiet seemed to stretch between us, suffocating. His eyes were fixed on the ceiling, his jaw tight. I could see the subtle flicker of anger starting to form in the set of his face, the tension in his shoulders. But he didn't yell. He never yelled. Instead, he withdrew into himself, his emotions shutting off like a switch. "You're always worried about what he'll think," he muttered, his voice cold now. The words stung. I flinched, but didn't know how to defend myself. What could I say? The truth was, I feared my husband's reaction more than anything. The consequences of having a child with Balthasar, the complications it would bring, the lies I would have to weave, it was a reality I couldn't face. "I just don't think I'm ready for that," I said, my voice softer, but the doubt still there, lingering. Balthasar's eyes finally turned toward me, but they weren't warm anymore. They were hard, cold even, like the man I hadn't really seen until now. "You're never ready," he said, his tone sharp, biting. "You always have an excuse, always something standing in the way." His words cut deeper than I expected. It wasn't just about the child anymore. It was about everything, the way I had been holding back from him, the way I couldn't give him what he wanted. He had wanted a future with me, something real, and I had denied him even that. "I'm sorry," I whispered again, but this time it felt hollow, empty, like I wasn't even apologizing for the right reasons. He pulled his arm from around me, sitting up in the bed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "You don't get it, do you?" he said, his voice thick with frustration. "This isn't just about the child. It's about you not trusting me, about you still holding on to something that isn't real. What we have, what I want with you, it's never going to work if you keep running scared." I sat up too, the weight of his words sinking in. "I'm not scared," I said, though I knew it wasn't entirely true. I don't want to destroy everything I've built." "You don't think this could be something worth building?" His voice was low now, almost a whisper, but it cut through the air between us like a blade. "I don't know," I said, my throat tight. "I don't know if I can have both. I don't know if I can have you and still keep the life I've built with him." There it was, the truth that had been simmering beneath the surface all along. Balthasar's face hardened, and for a moment I saw the man who had given so much of himself to me, who had shared his world, his desires, his love, only to have it rejected. The hurt in his eyes was unmistakable. "So, that's it then," he said flatly. "You choose him. You always will." I didn't know how to answer. I couldn't say yes, because it wasn't true. But I also couldn't say no, not with everything I had to lose. He stood up abruptly, walking across the room to the window, his back to me. I thought I could be enough for you. But I was wrong. His voice was distant now, and I felt a sharp ache in my chest. I wanted to reach out, to tell him that I was sorry, that it wasn't him I was running from, it was the life that would inevitably unravel if I let go of everything. But the words wouldn't come. In that silence, I realized that we were no longer just two people in a stolen affair. We were two people on opposite sides of something neither of us could change. He wanted more, but I couldn't give it to him. And I didn't know how much longer I could keep pretending that I could. My husband sent a message came through the moment I was stepping out of the shower, the soft ding of my phone cutting through the silence of the room. I wrapped myself in a towel and grabbed it off the counter, my heart giving a small, involuntary leap when I saw who it was from. It was my husband. I'm coming home in a week. I can't wait to see you again. I've missed you so much. His words were warm, familiar, and full of hope. A sense of duty tugged at my chest, but beneath that, something else stirred, something heavier, more complicated. My pulse quickened. It felt like a warning. Like the end of something I wasn't ready to end. I stared at the message, reading it again and again, as though I could somehow make the time stretch longer, as if I could delay the inevitable. But deep down, I knew that my life was about to change. The escape with Balthasar, the world we'd built together in secret, was coming to an end. I locked my phone and walked toward the closet, where the outfits I had so carefully chosen for this life hung like ghosts of what could have been. But instead of dressing, I felt the overwhelming need to see him, to have one last moment of freedom before it all came crashing down. Before the roles, the expectations, the duties would pull me back into the life I'd built with my husband. Without thinking twice, I grabbed my keys and headed out the door. Balthasar's apartment was as familiar as ever, the air thick with the scent of expensive cologne and the soft hum of jazz music playing in the background. When he opened the door, his dark eyes softened at the sight of me, but there was a flicker of weariness there too, like he knew something was about to change. "You came," he said, his voice hushed with a mix of surprise and understanding. "I need you," I said, stepping into his arms without another word. The door clicked shut behind me, and I let myself be enveloped in the warmth of his embrace. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't need to. The weight of everything that had been building between us was clear in the way we clung to each other, the urgency in our kiss, the need to forget the rest of the world. We spent the night together, in that way that was both reckless and intimate, as though we were saying goodbye without saying the words. His hands traced every part of me, as if trying to memorize the feeling of my skin, the way I fit against him. And I did the same, pressing myself into him, feeling the fire of his touch and the bittersweetness of knowing it was all coming to an end. I didn't talk about my husband's message. I didn't need to. He knew. Afterward, we lay side by side in the dim light, the city below us a blur of movement and noise. For a long time, neither of us spoke. There was nothing to say, nothing left to change the fact that this was the last time we would be together like this. "You're leaving, aren't you?" Balthasar asked quietly, his fingers gently brushing through my hair. "I have to," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I've already stayed too long." His chest tightened with a breath he didn't release. "I don't want to let you go." I closed my eyes, not trusting myself to speak. How could I tell him that a part of me wanted nothing more than to stay? That I was breaking inside, knowing I would never feel the same way again. But I had to go. I had to let him go. The night stretched on, each minute more painful than the last. I memorized every second with him, knowing I couldn't keep it. When dawn finally crept in, I kissed him one last time, leaving him with a soft promise that I couldn't keep. "I'll always remember this," I said, and it was as much a goodbye as I could give. As I walked out the door, my heart felt like it was shattering with each step. I didn't look back, but the image of his face lingered in my mind like a ghost. And when I finally returned home, the quiet house waiting for me felt emptier than ever. But I knew that in a week, my life would change again, and I would be forced to pick up the pieces of what I had left behind. Balthasar scandal. It was a normal day, sunlight filtering through the windows, the hum of the world outside, a distant noise. But when my phone buzzed, the calm shattered. The first notification I saw was a link with a headline that made my stomach drop. Balthasar in scandal, leaked videos expose his affairs. I clicked it, unsure of what I was about to see, but already dreading it. The video was short, shaky, but unmistakable. It showed Balthasar, his face visible, engaging with a woman in a private, intimate setting. My breath hitched as I realized the woman wasn't just any woman. It was me. The camera captured us in one of our stolen moments, the passion between us unguarded, raw. I felt the blood drain from my face. This video, this invasion of our privacy, wasn't the only one. There were more, I quickly learned. Each one, like a slow-motion train wreck, showed more of him with other women. The videos weren't just about me, they were about every affair he'd had, every moment of betrayal he'd caused for the other women in his life. And now, it was all exposed to the world. My hands were shaking as I closed the browser, but the damage had already been done. The shame I felt was suffocating, but what truly paralyzed me was the possibility that my husband might have already seen it. I didn't want to think about it. I couldn't. But the fear grew as the minutes passed. The guilt, the dread, and the panic clouded my mind. How would I explain this? How could I justify what I had done? Just then, my husband walked into the room, his face pale and tense. The moment our eyes met, I knew. He didn't need to say anything. His expression said it all. "Did you see it?" he asked, his voice tight, barely holding on to control. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My throat had gone dry, and my heart pounded in my chest. How could I even begin to explain this? "I saw the videos," he continued, his eyes dark with a mixture of disbelief and anger. "What the hell is going on?" His gaze locked on me, searching for answers. The room felt like it was closing in on me, suffocating. I wanted to say something, anything, but I couldn't find the words. I had never imagined that it would come to this, being caught, being exposed. He shook his head, stepping back, his face crumpling with hurt. "Why? Why didn't you tell me?" His voice broke, a raw edge of pain seeping through. "Why didn't you tell me what was happening? That you were seeing him?" I closed my eyes, my chest tightening. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words barely audible. I couldn't even look at him, couldn't face the damage I had caused. "You lied to me," he said, his voice low and shaking with emotion. "For months. And now it's all out there. Everyone will see it." "I never wanted this," I replied, my voice cracking. "I never wanted to hurt you. But I knew that didn't matter anymore. The truth had come out, then it was too late to hide behind excuses or apologies." He didn't say anything for a long time. He just stood there, his eyes fixed on me, as if trying to reconcile the woman he thought he knew with the one standing before him. And I could see it in his eyes, the trust had shattered. The foundation of everything we had built together was crumbling, and I had no way of fixing it. "I don't know if I can forgive you," he finally said, his words hanging in the air like a death sentence. I nodded silently, tears welling in my eyes. I didn't expect him to forgive me. What I had done was unforgivable. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving me alone with the mess I had created. The phone in my hand buzzed again, but I didn't even want to look at it. The world had already seen my betrayal. There was no escaping it now. Later that night, after he had gone to bed, I sat in silence, staring at my phone, unable to stop the flood of memories of him, of Balthasar, of the lies and the lust. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the video again, the image of me with him, a violation of everything I had once held dear. I couldn't stop what had happened. I couldn't erase the damage. And now, with my husband gone to bed and my life falling apart, all I could do was wait for the inevitable fallout to begin. I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. And somehow, I knew things would never be the same again. The day after the videos of Balthasar and I had leaked, everything felt like it was shattering in real time. My husband had been distant, quiet, but his eyes, filled with disbelief and heart, said everything. He knew something was wrong, knew that the life we'd built together wasn't what he thought it was. I remember the look on his face when he walked into the house that evening, the tension in his posture as he saw me sitting on the couch, my hands trembling, staring at the floor. "Are you going to explain this to me, or should I just leave?" His voice was cold, filled with an icy rage that I had never heard from him before. I felt a knot in my stomach. I wanted to speak, to make it right, but no words could take back what had already been done. His eyes locked onto mine, searching, waiting for something, anything that would give him answers. "It's not what you think," I tried to say, but my voice faltered. The words felt useless. How could I explain the betrayal? How could I explain how I'd let myself be swept up in a lie? "Not what I think," he repeated, his voice rising in frustration. "I saw the videos. I saw everything. You think I'm some fool who doesn't understand? Who doesn't see what's been happening behind my back?" My heart pounded in my chest. This was the confrontation I had feared, the truth exposed in a way I couldn't hide from. I knew he was angry, but more than that, he was hurt. I could see it in the way his hands balled into fists, the way his face contorted with pain. "I never meant to hurt you," I whispered, though the apology felt hollow. How could I make up for months of lies? How could I explain that part of me had been lost, trapped in something I thought was right, even though I knew it was wrong? "Then why did you let it go this far?" His voice cracked slightly as he asked the question that I knew would haunt me forever. "Why did you betray me like this?" I couldn't answer him, not with anything that would make sense. What could I say? That I had fallen for someone else. That I was too weak to stop myself. That I was confused and lost in a whirlwind of emotions. He stood there for a long moment, his eyes never leaving mine. The silence between us stretched painfully, each second feeling like a lifetime. Finally, his voice broke through again, more quietly this time, filled with the weight of everything he had discovered. "I don't even know who you are anymore." I could feel the impact of those words like a blow to my chest. He was right. The person he had known, the woman he had loved, was gone. And I had no idea how to find her again. I had no idea how to fix the destruction I'd caused. The tears began to well in my eyes, but I didn't know what good they would do. "I'm so sorry," I said again, though I knew it wouldn't change anything. It was too late for apologies. His gaze hardened, and he shook his head. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this," he muttered, his voice low with frustration and sadness. "I understand," I whispered, feeling the weight of his words sink deep inside me. Because I knew I couldn't ask him to forgive me, not after everything.